So, been about a week and wanted to let it breathe, hear what other people had to say. And now I was like, I didn't want to fully, like, total on the pile and whatnot, but it's going to have to be said that I don't know what we do about Tua. Now, I was like, I tried to talk about this last year, but it was sort of hard to talk about it because of the injuries. But but at the end of the season, I came out. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I was like Tua is good. I was like, we figured that out about Tua. Cool. This year, I felt like it was trying to figure out what level of good is he, and I think it's really a mixed bag. I'll say this: I don't think you could put him in the top five. Definitely not. Um, to be honest, I really think he's probably like 14 of the quarterbacks, and his numbers are crazy, but also, I mean, it's also like, yes, the talent. I was like, you need talent in order to be good. We know this, but you sort of just see the difference of him with talent versus like Allen or Lamar or Patrick Mahomes. Like, first of all, I'm like, you got the same receiver that Patrick Mahomes had, probably better version of him as well too. You have Jalen Waddle, even though he missed a good chunk of the season, he was in and out of the season for the most part, but they was lighting up the show. So, and you also have a really creative offensive coordinator with the head coach McDaniels. So you have all these things working for him. So therefore, it starts. It's almost like it's like he doesn't have to be Allen, Lamar, Mahomes. He doesn't have to be that. He doesn't have to be that game changer type of person. But he also seems like he's a very like mid game manager type of person too. Like, you can't get on his back. Uh, and granted, I was like, they try to be like, oh, he's had a winning record and all this other stuff, and I'm like, yeah, during some of those, Brian Flores years where it was kind of shaky, but I was like, he didn't fully start in any of those either. So, but I mean, but his whole, I was like, but it's really hard to sort of know what to do with it, because it's like, okay, because to me, I was like a couple years ago, when I think it was like probably Tua's like second season or whatever, we seen glimpses of him. I didn't think I thought he could be okay, but I didn't think he'd be good. So I was already like, I was like, when they were trying to trade him and fill out trades, I was one of those people that was like, yo, we should try to get Dak. And I know Dak just had his whole thing, his whole fiasco with the weekend, but I think Dak's a better quarterback than Tua. I'm not gonna lie. Then last year, even though after Tua's season, I'm like, I don't care. I will try to get Lamar Jackson. Nobody didn't try to get Lamar Jackson for whatever reason, but I just, because I'm like, now that being said, I'm also trying to get quarterbacks I think is better than Tua. I don't think you just I don't think you could just be like, let's just like get rid of Tua. There's not that many quarterbacks that, like I said, I feel like he's like 14 just off the top of my head. I'm not even like going through like a ranking list, and I'm like, that's already half the league that knows we got our quarterback. And I'm like, okay, cool, because they just don't. We done put all this time in. We done built them up. You can't just go out here and just find a quarterback. So that's why I'm like, okay, cool. He's our guy. This is what we're doing. But now it's also time for him to start getting paid. And that's where I feel like we got to start looking at some things. Now, I will say that the quarterback numbers hadn't gone up or gone crazy to where it should be a lot easier to slot him into a spot, because it's like, not Lamar, he's not Herbert, he's not Burrow. So I think I was like, we'll see what happens with Dak, because I was like, that might help the situation, because if it's really high, then you're like, okay, that's just crazy. Jerry Jones just gave him the money. But if it's also someone within that range of those quarterbacks, then it also makes it easier, because you're like, okay, cool, it's easier to slot. Like, you can't pay him top money with all these other people because, and I was thinking, I was like, do you do a Daniel Jones, Geno Smith contract? But I'm like, with Geno, he's a little bit older, so you know that he's not going to be the franchise quarterback. Daniel Jones, you sort of know that too, but he's a little bit younger. But also, those quarterbacks are like really friendly, where it's like you sort of know where they are in their career, and they can also sort of get out of them if need be. So that's sort of, I guess it'd be a little bit insulting in that aspect. But I was like, you got players on here that either going to be coming up for contracts, where it's like, where there's Waddle. I was like, you got Chubb, who you just like re-signed. I was like, if you try to keep on Ramsey with Howard, because the thing is you're going to have this team be like how they really and to be honest, I was like, we can't even really put stuff on injuries. I do think if injuries was there, it would help things out a lot better because it's like, cool, now the defense is up to snuff to battle against all these other quarterbacks and stuff, at least for a champ. But I was like, the offense had to look good. Then that's the problem. And a lot of the play calling almost seemed like it wasn't necessarily like the coaches over here doing bad play. It's really like, I don't know what to really do more with Tua. Because in that game with Kansas City, they were doing hella short passes, screens, and this is also what I was like, people brought up like cold weather and like his arm and stuff like that. I brought it up his arm a while back, that I'm like, you got Tyreek Hill, and that's who I mainly say on than Waddle, but I'm like, everybody was like, oh man, look at these bombs. Hill is crazy. Look at Tua giving Hill the ball. And I'm like, that's more Tyreek Hill than it is Tua. Because a lot of those passes really was short. You see that in the Kansas City game. A lot of those passes really look like that. He really doesn't throw Tyreek Hill in stride. Like, he gets good with Tyreek Hill in the intermediate routes and stuff like that. At times, sometimes he sails on them like it's like, dude, he's like 5'8". But he really short on a lot of those bombs, and in a way that I'm like, these could be so much easier touchdowns. These could be like, these are points that we're taking off, where it's like, cool, now because of that, now you're at the 6, and you just got to figure out how to, like, now all that fast and all that other stuff doesn't work the same way, and we don't have the receivers necessarily. Like, that's where it's like, okay, Tua got to be accurate. And I do think he's like, and he is exceptionally accurate, other than just like the palette, how they do the passes and stuff like that. Because accuracy can sort of be faked a bit too, where it's like 70% completion. It's like, yeah, but you throwing screens and dink and dunks, and of course it's going to be like that. It's really more like where he placing the ball and stuff like that. And I think Tua is really good at that type of stuff most of the time. I was like, sometimes it gets away from Tua, where I'm like, why did you throw that? Like in a way where it's like, for you to be accurate, you do this a little bit too much for me. But he sort of makes me think, like, I know everybody said Drew Brees, and I think that's really because they're like short in stature, they can't move and stuff like that. Which I don't think that's like a bad comp. I mean, but I also think Drew Brees had a better arm than Tua, and I think he was a lot more accurate. But but I was like, his situation of where he at sort of makes me think more Matt Ryan. And because I was like, Drew Brees, while like, yes, things weren't perfect around him, he still always had them in pretty good, where it's like he still had the Saints in a good spot. To me, Matt Ryan, it was like everything always had to be really good. He always had great offensive weapons, a really good line. I was like, it was always deep, but they were plugging so much in on offense, and then they finally did start to get like a better, pretty good defense, so everything sort of had to be perfect around. But I'm like, that's the type of quarterback he is, like same thing like with Peyton Manning, like everything had to be great around him because of the type of quarterback he is. That's not really, it can be used as a dig when you comparing it to somebody else, but when we're just talking about themselves, I'm like, no, that's really just the type of quarterback they are, where it's like, with the not a great arm, not mobile. And I was like, I don't even think to be honest, he's not even really mobile in the pocket. That's where I sort of have more like, people like, he can't run, and I'm like, now y'all want to like people to run, but I'm like, it's not, you don't have to run like Mahomes doesn't run like that. He can scamper for like 15 yards on your ass that you didn't see coming, but he's really good at manipulating the pocket, knowing where to move and stuff like that. And to me, if you can't run, I was like, you need to have that in your book. Like Brady, that's what he like. Brady can't run, but he moved in the pocket. Drew Brees, him being short, moved in the pocket. They can't run. I was like, Tua can't run. So I'm like, he doesn't move in the pocket like that. He doesn't really manipulate the line like that. Um, and I was like, I know everybody's been talking about like he only got the one read thing, and to an extent, I was like, I do get that now, but I'm also like, if you got Tyreek Hill, that's my first read. I don't care, but I don't think he does a really good job of moving the defense, and I just think that's where like McDaniels, I think has schemed a lot with the motion stuff, but I think a lot of people starting to pick that up to where it doesn't work like how it did. And therefore, because Tua doesn't really get off the one read that much and move any of the defense that way, now you're sort of just stuck. Because the plan of we're just going to have really fast people and out athletic you really worked with your top two people did, but then it sort of does a drop off with your 3-4 type of thing. That's why I thought Cedric Wilson was a good pick. I mean, him staying and coming back this year, but he played really good while Waddle wasn't there, and that's why I thought Claypool, if he could get implemented, was going to be good because he doesn't always play like his 6'4" frame, but he is a big body, and that's what I sort of think. I actually sort of think that Tua needs that a little bit more, almost like if you remember like what they were doing in Carolina with Cam Newton, where they would have 6'4" receiver, because he sort of sells the ball, and I was like, Tua sort of sells the ball, but also it gives you a good catch radius than these two like 5'8", 6 feet receivers, whereas like Cedric Wilson's like 6'2", and you can see he can high point it a lot better. I just think that Tua needs, he just sort of like needs a lot, but the problem is like we sort of giving him that. Like the only thing you could really ask for now is you got a more dominant running back. Where you can change the play, where you can change the game, where you can run the ball. Like not kind of like the speed thing is cool, but not. But when you got two people that basically the same space, and then and during the regular season you can sort of do that. But I'm like, against like the real teams, you're gonna have to run the ball. And that's always been my thing, is that I was like, Mostert and A-Chain are really good, but I don't think they're like, I'm like, yeah, but you could have used a Jonathan Taylor. You could have used a Derrick Henry. Um, so I just think, I was like, but this is more about Tua than talking about the team. That's another video. I'm already giving snippets of it. I just don't. I was like, I think if you could figure out the right amount of money, go ahead and do it. But I think the level that you're expecting to get with him in these games against these other quarterbacks, against these other matchups, you might actually have to have just a really good. You might have to go the Chiefs route of a really good defense, and your offense is able to just grind out games. And I know that's not how I want to play. I know that's not how the style it looks, and it sounds boring or whatever. Especially like Mahomes could do it because he's Mahomes. We already done seen the flash. He already got the brand built behind him. Whereas Tua doesn't have all that, to where it just looks like kind of thing. And it doesn't. And it's in Miami, where it's like somewhere like Baltimore, it works with that type of sound and stuff. So I was like, he's going into the fifth year. I would actually just play out the fifth year and see how that goes. If he plays really well to where I got to pony up money, what's the problem? It's a lot. I was like, it's a lot better than pony up money and then being like, well, now we're stuck with this shit for like 3 more years. Where you almost like where you like pay Russell Wilson the way you do it. Like I'm like he's really only had one season. Last year was sort of a mullet. That was like his like really full time season, and he was sort of injured, so it was his one full season. I did also too. I was like, I don't want it to be like where Jalen Hurts, eh? Then it was a okay season. Then it was like damn season, and then this season was like, eh. and you pay him off of being paying Tua off of like he's just been better than what we've had in I don't know like 20 years. Do you also want to do that? Because I like we kept Tannehill way too long, and I was like he's better than Tannehill, but we kept that way too long than what we needed to as well too. So I don't know. I don't know what you do. I was like, there's no quarterback you could pick up without also alienating that. At least I'm like, look, for at least about 4 more years, it's just going to be Tua, and you already see that where I was like, I think it's a high floor, but I don't think it's a high ceiling. I don't know what else you do, but anyway, that's my thoughts on Tua. What do you think? I was like, are you in full support? I was like, do you think you should get rid of him? You're somewhere in the middle. Like I'm sort of in the middle. I don't think we should get rid of him, but I don't. But then also there ain't no other options like there was when I was like Lamar and Dak. Just saying, because I also think those quarterbacks are better than Tua. But anyway, see you for another Dolphins conversation.